Chapter 2, Section 8, The Presidency, Informal Powers. The President's informal powers are those that are not expressly granted by the Constitution. Instead, they have developed over time as circumstances of certain presidencies have resulted in the opportunity or need to expand the scope of the President's authority. Executive agreements. The use of executive agreements is a prime example of the expansion of the President's authority to conduct foreign relations beyond the express language of the Constitution. Although treaties must be ratified by the Senate, the Supreme Court has held that the President can enter into executive agreements, formal pacts with foreign governments, without the Senate's approval, even though such agreements are not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. According to the Supreme Court, an executive agreement will have the same legal effect as a treaty, so long as the President enters into the agreement under her authority to conduct foreign relations, and so long as the agreement does not otherwise violate federal law. Because the process for creating executive agreements is less formal and more expedient than the process for making treaties, executive agreements can be a powerful tool for fostering cooperation with other nations. However, executive agreements only bind the president who signed them and can be rescinded by future presidents who do not wish to adhere to them. Executive orders. An executive order is a directive issued by the president outside of the legislative process and without express congressional approval. Although the Constitution does not explicitly permit the use of executive orders, the president's authority to issue them derives from the president's express constitutional duty to enforce federal law. The president's ability to make executive orders is somewhat limited. They cannot be used to expand the president's scope of authority beyond those powers delegated to the executive branch by the Constitution, or, in some instances, by Congress. However, the president can exert tremendous influence over the operation of the federal government by issuing executive orders that determine how and to what extent federal law will be implemented, providing an additional opportunity for the president to shape public policy. Signing statements. A signing statement is a written statement issued by the president upon signing a bill. A signing statement often reveals the president's reasons for signing the bill and opinions on how the language of the bill should be interpreted or implemented by the federal government. Sometimes the president uses a signing statement to express concern about certain provisions of a bill, indicating that the executive branch will not enforce those provisions or will do so in a limited way. In other instances, the president makes a signing statement for political reasons, such as to encourage public support for the law. Like executive orders, the Constitution does not expressly allow or prohibit signing statements, but the Supreme Court has approved their use. The Supreme Court has yet to determine, however, whether signing statements are part of the legislative record that should be considered when the judicial branch is interpreting the meaning of the law. Bargaining and persuasion. The president's ability to promote a policy agenda is directly tied to her aptitude for negotiation. The vast majority of lawmaking power rests with Congress, and the president is able to exert only indirect influence on the legislative process. For example, the president is unable to introduce legislation in Congress, but he or she can enlist the support of a senator or representative who agrees to introduce legislation consistent with the president's policy vision. Likewise, the president's veto power incentivizes Congress to seek the president's input in the legislative process, since most controversial legislation does not pass Congress with a veto-proof majority. In addition, many members of Congress are unwilling to engage in a public battle with the president, who occupies a more prominent position in the political landscape and is more likely to win a public debate. Because a perceived loss could shorten the political career of a representative or senator who challenges the president. For example, a member of the president's party who refuses to advance the president's agenda might lose his next primary election to a challenger who promises to support the president. Similarly, a member of the opposing party in a swing district or swing state where the president is politically popular may face a strong challenger in the next general election. Because of these electoral pressures, the president is often able to persuade enough members of Congress to support legislation that might otherwise be considered unpopular.